Hello, my name is Suj'n Chon. I use she, her pronouns. I'm joining you today from Swinomish Indian Reservation in rural Skagit County, where I live and work. Most of my recreation also happens near here on the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish and surrounding tribes that includes the Swinomish, Upper Skagit, Swaxiatl, Nooksack, Lummi, Stow Low, Inkaklapma, Colville, Samish, and what is otherwise known as the North Cascades ecosystem. These and other indigenous bands and tribes have stewarded the area since time immemorial and continue to do so today, even as settler policies and practices continually undermine the rights that were afforded to the tribes by the 1855 Settlement Treaty of Point Elliott. Now that includes salmon mismanagement, habitat mismanagement, and repeated failures to respect tribal sovereignty. For the privilege to live and work where we do, our household pays an annual lease to the tribe. And we are also looking forward to when things open up again with community members and with our neighbors so that we can be in-person relationship. If you haven't already, I do encourage you to take time to learn about where you live and work and play, and find your own ways to be in partnership with those who have stewarded those lands since time immemorial. The native-land.ca website is a really great resource to start identifying the indigenous territories that you are on, and you can also find that as an app. My background is in hiking, backpacking, snowshoeing, alpine scrambling, and for most of these activities, I'm also an instructor and a trip leader for the Mountaineers. I also just recently rolled off as founding member of the Mountaineers Equity and Inclusion Committee. Today in this workshop, we're going to talk about what the 10 essentials are, try to reframe it from a list of gear to a list of purposes, and then to discuss examples of gear and how to procure them. And we'll talk about kind of the lower cost or no cost options as well as fancier options. So what are the 10 essentials? I have this up here because I want to point out that it's not like the kitchen sink, although it can feel like that sometimes. And we're going to talk about a lot of gear today and a lot of different things that can count as the 10 essentials, but it really doesn't have to be the kitchen sink. The 10 essentials first appeared in the 1974 version of Freedom of the Hills, which is a standard textbook used for climbing and mountaineering by the Mountaineers. You'll find that the Mountaineers have their list of 10 essentials that they use today. That's evolved over time. Other organizations also have a 10 essentials list that might be slightly different, but the concept is essentially the same. And the 10 essentials are really about safety and survival. And what they're meant to do is kind of take the thinking out of trip preparation. So what that means for me is I never take my essentials out of my pack unless I'm either restocking or switching to a different pack based on the trip. But really, the idea is if I have these 10 essentials with me all the time, always in my pack, then I don't ever have to think about what do I need to bring for my safety and my survival. So used as a simple frame, the 10 essentials don't always have to fit into like the number 10. And at the end of this workshop, we'll talk a little bit about what are some other essentials that I bring. And I know that other folks have their own extra essentials on top of that. And again, the 10 essentials as a concept is really what do we need? What are my necessary items for safety and survival? So what I really want to do is talk a little bit about 10 essentials as purpose-driven rather than gear-driven. And we will talk about gear because gear does help us make those purposes come to reality. But one of the things to take in mind for a gear is that they're even because they are meant for survival and for safety in case of emergency, these are items that actually rarely get used. And so there is a tendency after you've hiked a lot or you've done a lot of backcountry trips, there is a tendency to be like, well, I haven't used the first aid kit, or I haven't needed the fire starter. And so there's a tendency to be like, well, I want to lighten my load. I really want to do something simple today. And so I will just take them out of my pack. And remember, these are meant to not be used. They're there in case of an emergency, but we want to have access to them in case there is an emergency. So don't think of them as necessary for every trip. Think of them as necessary for the trip that goes wrong, or not wrong, but doesn't go the way that it's planned. So what are the different things that you need basically to survive and be safe in the outdoors when you can't rely on other systems of survival to help? Other systems of survival might be a lot of people, it might be 911, it might be a hospital, ambulance, all those things that we're used to when we're at our homes. Typically, most of us, when at our homes or our workplaces, we have access to 911 or we have access to ambulances, but what are the things that we need to stay safe and survive if we don't have access to that? So what will keep you warm? What will stop or prevent illness or injury? What will stop or prevent illness or injury? What's going to help you stay put? So if I have to hunker down overnight or maybe multiple nights, what's going to help me safely stay put? And then what's also going to help me get out? So that might be the map, that might be the light, that might be whatever it is to help me safely evacuate myself. So talked a little bit earlier about the 10 essentials originating from the mountaineers. Here is the list of the current 10 essentials that the mountaineers use. And that's navigation, headlamp, sun protection, first aid, knife and repair kit, fire, shelter, extra food, extra water, extra clothes. And we'll talk about these particular 10 essentials as categories in a minute. And we'll get more into like, what do these things mean? So let's start with navigation. The purpose of navigation is survival, and what's going to help me either stay found or get out safely. And navigation will include things like a map and a compass and a GPS. Illumination, that's for safety and survival. What's going to prevent me from getting injuries? Like if I'm in the dark, how am I going to make sure I don't trip or fall off a cliff all of a sudden because I didn't see where I was going? Or what are the things that are going to help me get out safely? Sun protection, that's really safety. What's going to keep my skin from being burned or my eyes from being blinded? So it's also like help prevent illness. Like how do I keep the sun off my skin so that I don't get heat stroke? Things like that. There's also first aid, that's safety, how to prevent, stop, reduce illness and injury. So that's basically medications and like wound care are basically the two big categories of first aid. Knife and repair kit, we'll talk about that in a second, what actually is in a repair kit, but those are basically like what's going to reduce injuries. Again, like that might be the tweezer, that might be using your knife to get out a stinger, something like that, but also if I have to make a shelter, if I have to replace a boot lace that has broken, and I need footwear, I need a repair to my footwear, all the different things that are basically going to help me get out safely. Fire is really how to stay put safely. What's going to keep me warm if I have to stop. And it also could be water purification, it could be cooking, it could be signal, it could be sterilizing blades if I need to. So fire has a lot of great purposes. And but for the most part, when we think about having fire or ability to keep fire in our packs, that's because we want to be able to stay warm if we need to. Extra food and extra water. These are all things that are going to be both for our safety and our survival. I put reduce illness here because basically you do need calories and water to ward off hypothermia. So if we run out of food or we run out of water, our chances of getting hypothermia go way up. Also extra clothes. That again is for safety, making sure that we stay warm. And with our 3 layers of clothing that we want to take out with us, which is the wicking layer, that's the layer like this base layer that's going to keep the perspiration off of our skin and evaporate instead of keeping us cold and wet. Insulation like this down vest. I wouldn't wear more than this when I'm actually out, not in my house, but things that are going to keep the warmth close to our body. And then the rain and wind protection. That's the rain slicker. That's basically your rain shell that's going to keep the rain and the wind off of our bodies. All right, so let's go piece by piece. Navigation, purpose of that is survival, how to stay found and get out safely. So what are the tools that we might need to help us with that purpose of staying found and get out safely? So let's see, for many of us, that's a compass and a map. So here's my map. Here's my compass that I'm getting out. That is the old school, way of making sure that we're staying safe and being found. This is a compass with adjustable declination. There's a whole nother series of education that needs to happen to understand declination, but essentially, depending on where we are in the world and what year we're in or what moment in time we're in, our declination is different than what is on just a standard compass without a declination. I won't try to explain that, but anyway, just so you know, that's mapping compass. This is a map that I have inside of a gallon size Ziploc bag. This is my very inexpensive way to keep my map dry. And this is a map that I printed out from CalTopo. This is a topo map. This helps me see the slopes and the gradations, as well as my trail. Like I said, a lot of people now have moved away from mapping compass. I'm traditionally trained in backcountry exploration, so I do still use a mapping compass, but actually this is now my backup and not my primary way of navigation. Because these days we also have our smartphones. For most of us, we use smartphones, and there are free smartphone apps that have GPS on them and are even better navigators or navigating assistants than a map and compass, because a map and compass doesn't talk to us the way that an app does. However, smartphones or any other electronic devices are not fail-proof. They could run out of juice, especially if, let's say, we are out longer than we expected, and now we have no way to recharge our smartphones. Or we get lost and we're now in an area that we haven't downloaded a map. And so now we're kind of flying a little bit blind because our app is not helping us like we had hoped it would. So free maps that you can get are at a ranger station is one low cost or no cost navigation tool. Also using that smartphone again, assuming that you have one, taking a photo of the trailhead map, it just helps you get a picture of where you're going or how far it is, usually the trailhead maps also are topo maps, so you can actually see the slopes and how steep you might expect your trip to be. CalTopo, I was just mentioning, I printed this map from CalTopo. CalTopo is a website you can go to, caltopo.com. It allows you to make free topo maps. You can in the search bar at top, put in something like Lake Anne, and maybe there's like 50 Lake Annes in the United States, but I think it usually tries to find the one that's closest to your laptop based on where your laptop says that you are, and I'll try there first, and then you can always adjust if that's not exactly what you were looking for. But anyway, caltopo.com is one website that you can use to basically create your own topo maps, print them out, put them in the gallon Ziploc, and then move on. Also, you can get free GPS maps, apps for your phone. Again, there's like free versions and paid versions. Caltopo also has a paid version. That just means more features, but I feel like, I can get by with just the free version of Caltopo, and also with the different types of GPS apps that you can get. My favorite is Gaia. It's in the slides. There's also a free version and a paid version, but Gaia the free version tells me more than I need to know, I think. So it's super great. For navigation, you can also get fancier options. Again, here's a fancier compass with the adjustable declination. That means I don't have to do the mental calculations and subtract the current declination difference right now. But it doesn't help you to have a compass with adjustable declination unless you actually know how declination works. So I wouldn't suggest going out and buying, I think these run about $50. I wouldn't recommend going out and buying one until you've taken a class to make sure that you can use that feature that you're paying for well. Then you can purchase maps from all different types of sources like Nat Geo and Green Trails and USGS. And the nice thing about those is those maps are nice and big. So if you're being really specific about your backcountry travel and you really need to know specifically, like in any point, how steep it is or what the chances are of exposure, things like that, then those big maps are super great. If you're doing something a little bit more low key, hiking with well-defined trails and well-traveled and things like that, you may not need the really large maps. Yeah, and then, like I said, I love these little Ziploc bags, but you can buy dedicated map cases and it'll run you some money. Illumination. So that's basically safety and survival. That's the purpose of it. And basically, how do you see things to get out or be safe, staying where you are? And there's basically three main sources of illumination that you can have. And I did split them into like low cost, free, low cost, and kind of fancier options, but really even headlamps, which is what we recommend because it keeps your hands free, are still pretty generally low cost. You can probably find them at a dollar store for maybe, I don't know, $5, $8. I'm not quite sure. But just make sure when you do buy a headlamp or a flashlight or whatever, that's going to continue to work for you if you need it to work for you long term. So also, as part of your 10 essentials, that headlamp or that flashlight should include spare batteries. So this is part of my 10 essentials, as well as my headlamp. Again, smartphone, almost all smartphones have some kind of light feature on it, super handy, except that you have to hold on to your smartphone to navigate, which is not great if you need your hands for something else like your hiking poles. And then also you just run the risk of running out of juice when you don't want to run out of juice, especially if you're out longer than you expected and all of a sudden your battery is gone. So get that headlamp if you can. It's not that expensive. I think you can get them for pretty inexpensive. Okay, sun protection. Basically, how do we keep our skin from burning and our eyes from burning? And the eyes from burning, this is really a bigger issue in the wintertime when the sun rays basically reflect off the snow and hit your eyes. So snow blindness is actually a fairly common problem. That's why you'll see on ski slopes and things like people wearing these large goggles with a lot of sun protection on those lenses. Yeah. So there are plenty of free and low cost options to basically shield your skin from the sun rays in your eyes. That can include long sleeve shirts and pants that are not cotton. And they're, I think any kind of clothing covering that covers your skin is going to be more helpful than not. If it's warm, then you may opt instead to use sunscreen and then keep your skin exposed to the sun. Or you can get a tech sun shirts, although I put that on the more fancy version because they can tend to be a little bit expensive. Other things that are really great, pretty inexpensive, or people already have them around, are hats or caps with brims that keeps the sun out of your eyes. The sunscreen that you can get at Trader Joe's or dollar stores or grocery outlet or all those different places. The cost is actually pretty manageable, especially regular sunscreen, not reef safe, but I have it under the fancier versions. That reef safe mineral sunscreen is a little bit more expensive. It is true, although the cost is going down, and it is so much better for marine life that we do recommend, if you can afford it, to go with the reef safe mineral sunscreen, especially because the cost is coming down. Regular sunglasses are fine. You can get them at the drugstore as well, $10 or less. You can also get polarized sunglasses. I got these at REI for maybe $30. I think they might be kids, which might be why it's a little less expensive. I mean, polarized sunglasses can also, just like everything else, can go way astronomical, but I think you can also get not super expensive ones. My partner likes to use sun gloves. Those are made out of SPF tech clothing. Yeah, but there are many different options for sun protection, but please protect your eyes and your skin. First aid. So I am a wilderness first responder certified. And so I do carry a first aid kit that's probably a little bit more robust than the average day hiker. But basically you want to carry the medications and the wound care items that will, again, reduce illness or reduce injury. So that might be bandages, ointments, pain relievers, ibuprofen, all those different options. And then if you are trained in first aid, some of the items that you were trained to use. The one thing about, and I have it under like more expensive options to get these pre-packaged first aid kits. Part of the problem with those first aid kits, besides being expensive, is they now have a lot of items in here that are super helpful, but if you don't have some training in first aid, you might not actually understand what they're used for. And so it's not just like the compass with the adjustable declination. It's not that useful to have a tool that you're carrying around, a tool that you don't really know how to use. So make sure when you're building out your first aid kit, which you can do, and you can, just stuff all the supplies in a sandwich bag or a Ziploc bag to keep them waterproof, is like, just understand what the different items are for, so that, it's useful to you. So here I have a blister kit and a CPR mask and gloves, and I have some wound care and an ACE bandage here, and some large gauze and triangle bandages and medication. And that's kind of the components that make up my first aid kit. And some of the inexpensive ways to build out your first aid kit is, I love these little pill pouches that you can get at the drugstore. They're like 50 count for like $3-ish. And basically you can take the medications that you already have in your home, whether you have a bottle of Tylenol or a bottle of ibuprofen, or in this case, this is potassium tablets. And then you can individually create your own little medication packets. Number one, this is lightweight because you're not carrying the entire bottle. And number two, you're not paying for these things, which are individually wrapped medications that are expensive. The other thing that I carry under my meds kit, I have all the different types of things, is honey packets. And the use for this is really for diabetic emergencies. And you want some kind of liquid sugar that a patient will be able to absorb even if they're not conscious. And so I think these honey packets are really useful. Whenever I see them at a place where I'm, ordering some takeout food or things like that, I just grab one or two so I can just add it to my first aid kit. I don't know if I should say that, but there you go. Let's see, what else did I see in here? Oh yeah, you can use retired bed sheets that you could use for triangle bandages. Tampons and sanitary pads are both really great. The whole purpose of those things is to absorb blood. So imagine a tampon or for nosebleeds, or sanitary pads for being able to absorb a lot of blood if there's a big emergency. So again, those are things that you might have around your house depending on who you are or who you live with. But you can just add those to your pack. All right, knife and repair kit. There are a lot of different things that can go into repair kit. I mentioned earlier that you might have a boot lace that snaps or something like that, and all of a sudden you don't have really reliable footwear to help you get out. These zip ties that you can get at the hardware store for like, I don't know, 50 cents or something. You could get a pack of these for like 70 cents, I think. I just carry a couple of these with me, and this is really great to just fasten something if I need a temporary fastener. Let's see. Paracord here. Paracord is super great for a variety of reasons. You might need it to help you hoist a tarp, and that tarp is now going to be your shelter. You might also, I have a carabiner on here as part of my toolkit. So if I have an emergency, I'm stuck somewhere and I need to hang my food because I'm also in bear country. Now I have a automatic bear bag hanger. Yeah, or I might need to use this cord to help pull somebody out of a situation where they need help with some kind of cord. So cord is super useful. I bought this cord at the Army surplus store on First Avenue in Seattle, downtown Seattle. You can just, they have them stored on a big coil, and you might be able to get the other places too, like maybe a Big Five or something, where you can just say, I want 50 feet of cord. And this is, I don't know, a handful of dollars, maybe $3, $4. I'm not quite sure. I don't remember. It's been a long time. But anyway, cord. And for me, I like to have the carabiner too, because now I can use this to hang my food. Also, blades of any sorts. Here's a really fancy, heavy duty multi-tool that has multiple blades and functions. I rarely take this out because it's a little bit heavy and I don't need all these things. So I only take this out when I'm going on a multi-day adventure where I'm going to be pretty remote, and I want many tools to help me survive if I need to. But in general, if I'm going on a little day hike and I know there's going to be lots of other people around and I just need a simple tool maybe to help cut some duct tape, because I need the duct tape to fasten something. Now I have a little, like the little scissors thing on here, or multiple other things, but this is super tiny. It has a little tiny blade on it. It's not that it's not super functional. I don't need it to be for the purpose of a well-traveled trip. Again, I would not take this if I'm going to places where I'm more remote and I'm really going to need to count on maybe just myself or just maybe myself and my trip partner. Then I'll carry something a little bit more heavy duty. I mentioned duct tape just a second ago. Duct tape is great for just about everything. It's like super, I don't know, it's like multi-purpose everything. The way that I carry my duct tape is wrapped around my pole. So every time I take my pole out, I also know that I have my duct tape with me. And then now I have the scissors so I can cut things if I need to make some repairs of some sort. You can also use duct tape to like as blister care. It's just, I don't know, it's like the cheapest blister care item that you can probably find. Yeah. And we mentioned the larger things. And then, you know, there's like paracord bracelets. If you see in the bottom right hand there are different ways to carry paracord. But I just think that just getting a roll, this actually has a lot more paracord than that bracelet anyway. So it's cheaper and I think this is more functional. All right, fire. So how to basically stay put safely? How do I stay warm? Do I need to like start a fire to also signal if like things are really dire and I need to signal to and create smoke, or sterilizing blades if I really need to make some cuts into the body and I need to sterilize blades. Fire has so many great uses. Let's see. So again, you can use Ziplocs for many things to keep things dry. So I have different size Ziplocs for different things. You can put matches that you already have inside a Ziploc, and now you have, you know, a semi-waterproof container. You know, Ziplocs are also not the most sturdy, but you know, here you have a little extra protection from water. And there, besides a way to make a flame, you also need a way to get the fire going. And if it's wet, if it's windy, you know, there are so many reasons why a flame is not enough. A flame is not enough. So you actually need something to light and to keep the fire going. And like I said, in any case where it's wet or it's windy, you're going to need some help. So this is handmade fire starter. I have a Ziploc with 3 of them in there, and this is part of my 10 essentials. I carry that as my fire, but I'll just show you. This is basically the paper cup inside of a egg carton, and I just put some cotton balls in there. Hopefully these are all things that you already have at home, or some kind of, you know, some people use dryer lint. And then for me, I just take some melting candle wax and I just cover that cotton ball with the wax, and now I have homemade fire starter. And other people use Vaseline. If you have Vaseline at home, that's equally as good. I do like the wax a little bit more because it hardens and it doesn't get sticky. But you know, Vaseline is just as good. Just make sure that's in some kind of plastic bag, so like the Vaseline doesn't smear anyway. But anyway, now I have basically free fire starter, and instead of like trying to keep a flame going with a lighter that's going to keep going out, and then I have like a really hard time getting something caught. One of these fire starters will keep a flame going for a handful of minutes. And now I have something that's basically helping me keep a fire going while I try to get some kind of other fuel from around me going. So yeah, so you can get waterproof matches. That's waterproof matches. These are not cheap, and neither are these little containers, but you don't have to go this route. And you'll see, like, as we go through things, that I have some of these fancier versions of things. And it's only because I've been doing this for about 20 years. And over the years, over the 20 years, like, I've picked up an item here, I've picked up an item there, as I've like built out my inventory over 20 years. But I will say actually that many of the things that I've invested in, I don't actually use. So I think this is fine, but this is just as good. I actually am redundant and I carry both. You don't have to, but I like redundancy. That's part of the risk management piece of me that you can also buy commercial fire starter. It's made out of chemicals. It's probably lighter, but it's also more expensive. And this is like pretty much all natural. Those chemical fire starters are not. Shelter. So basically survival and safety, how to stay put safely. If I need to stay overnight, what's going to keep me warm and dry, or as warm as possible and as dry as possible, and also keep me from getting hypothermia. I'm going to basically show you my favorite shelter item, which is also a first aid item, which is one of these heavy duty emergency blankets. And the reason why I like it is it has multiple functions. Number one, it's reflective inside, so it will reflect heat back into you if you're wrapping yourself around it. It's also waterproof, so now this can be a shelter. And these heavy duty first aid blankets come with grommets. So now with my cord and these grommets, I have a way to hang this up and use this as a tarp, as well as if I need to actually wrap it around my body, I can use it as an emergency blanket. When I bought this, probably, I don't know, 10 years ago, it probably was about, I don't know, like $18. So with inflation, it's more, I don't know, I'm guessing maybe more like 25. I'm not quite sure. But as you can see, this is a well-loved. I have my duct tape here. I have duct tape all over this place. So it can also be repaired with the handy duct tape, but this is super. I think that's, to me, I think this is a good investment in a piece of gear if you're going to spend some money, because of how many different uses it has. But you don't have, there are other options for, less expensive. There are these lightweight space blankets that are probably, I don't know, maybe $2 or $3 a piece. They're super lightweight. They also do that same function of like reflecting heat back to you, but they're also pretty flimsy and one use, and they tear pretty easily. So I think, like, I do carry this around with me typically for day hikes where I know like it's going to be well traveled and pretty short, and like this is like the last resort. But for anything where I feel like I really do need to think about what do I have to do to stay safe if there's no one else around to help me, or if the person who I'm with had to go get help for me, or if I have to help somebody get help and I need to build them a shelter, I would definitely go with one of these. So there's other options for shelters, including this is an emergency bivvy, and it's waterproof, breathable, and basically you wrap your body inside of it. It's not as functional as one of these, because really the only function it has is that you can put your body in it, but it is super great if you need basically some kind of cocooning, and it is kind of lightweight, and it's pretty nice. So I do have one of those too. Again, this is an item that I've spent some money on and never have had to use. It's super great. And I think I still prefer the blanket. So here are some of those options. So another thing is that body bag that you see over there. That's mostly used in other countries. They're harder to find here, but it's basically like something that you can wrap around you to stay shielded from the rain. And, you know, people in other countries often use that to, even like if it's raining, they want to read the map or something like that. They just get in the body bag and they can see the map and not and they'll get shielded from the rain and the wind. All right, extra food and extra water. You need extra food and extra water to ward off hypothermia. I think I mentioned that before. And how much water should you bring? This is the age-old question, I think. So water is heavy. And we do have a tendency, some people have the tendency to not bring enough water because they're trying to save weight. I think of it as like conditioning weight. This is like, it's good for me to be carrying weight because it's good for my conditioning, but you know, try to bring it, if you can, 2 liters of water when you go out, and more if it's going to be a longer or hotter hike, and or if you have a plan on how you're going to replenish your water, make sure that you know that there's water sources where you can get water in a way to purify that water or filter that water. Yeah, I've run out of water before, and so I know how important water is. So for me, one of the things that I do is I just carry one of these like half-liter Nalgene's in the bottom of my pack. Again, it's conditioning weight. I think of it as conditioning weight. And the point is to never have to use this. If I get to the point where I break into this last half-liter, then I know that things are in a pretty bad state. And so this is like my emergency. And so I should be planning in my trips to carry the water that I need, not have to break into that. And then I also, in my emergency kit, have as last resort, water purification drops. So if I do have to pick up water from a source that's not already, you know, filtered or sanitized at home or things like that, I have these water purification drops. It takes a while for these to activate, and it takes a while to purify water. So this really is last resort for survival. It's not something that I just normally do. Yeah, and then foods. So again, I have a little pouch of extra food. This is not the food that I plan to eat on my trip. I have a lunch pail, or, you know, I have a lunch thing, or I have things that I keep separate. And then this is like break into it if I absolutely need to. So what I have in here are some extra bars. You know, I have some like vegan jerky in here, some Reese's Pieces. You know, I think I have a little bit of peanut butter in here, all the little things that are going to help me survive if I unexpectedly need to get into an extra stash. Now, this is my extra food only for a day hike. If I'm going out into the backcountry, I'm actually bringing a whole extra day's worth of food. So that's extra backpacking meals and things like that. This seems pretty small, and it is. So it's extra calories for an emergency for a day hike. Yeah, extra clothes. This is like my little pouch of extra clothes, again, that I always have in my backpack. And this has a warm hat, some gloves, dry socks, a thin wool top, and a thin wool bottom base layer. And again, this is a bag of extra clothes that I hope I don't have to break into. And again, this is for something more like a day hike. And that's why it actually compacts down to a pretty small little thing, and it's pretty lightweight. If I'm obviously going on a bigger trip and going to be farther out, I might bring some extra clothes. Also, if it's the winter time, I'm going to be carrying at least two dry hats and at least 2 or 3 dry pairs of gloves. Nothing is worse than wet gloves, which it easily can happen in the Pacific Northwest to get your gloves wet and then having to cycle through them and then running out and then freezing your poor fingers off. Oh, speaking of which, one of the other items that I like to just keep in my first aid kit or my 10 essentials is just one of these things. It's a little extra heat in case I absolutely need it. They're not that expensive. I think, they come in packages and they're not super heavy. So it's an extra peace of mind item. All right. And, there's so many ways that you can bring your extra clothes. You can have what's already in your closet as long as it's not cotton, because cotton does keep the moisture on your clothes and then you have a higher chance of hypothermia with wet cotton. So you want to avoid cotton when you do go out into the backcountry or even on a trip where you just want to make sure that you have a way to stay dry and stay warm. And cotton, you can't stay dry if it gets wet. Goodwill, thrift stores are great ways to get non-cotton clothes. Sometimes in the fitness section of the thrift store or Goodwill, you can get pretty inexpensive things. You can also spend a lot of money on clothes. If you pay attention at all to different catalogs for sporting clothing, it can get really expensive. And basically it's the technology that keeps things lightweight, but dumps heat, keeps you dry and keeps you warm, or it keeps you warm. And you can spend a lot of money, but you don't have to. You really can start building out your inventory at thrift stores and at Goodwill. And at secondhand stores like Ascent Outdoors in the Ballard area of Seattle, or the garage sale section of your local REI. There are ways to get not inexpensive clothing. Well, there are ways to get inexpensive, but there are ways to get the type of clothing that can get super expensive at not full price by, either getting it secondhand or, going to the garage sale or taking advantage of the different sales that happen at REI and other outdoor retailers. All right, so we talked about the 10 essentials and the different categories and the different purposes and the types of gear that you can use to help fulfill those purposes. And then there are other quote unquote essentials that maybe not be like super essential for safety or survival, but maybe for comfort. So I have a list of essential items that I like that are really for my comfort, but and let me share what they are for me. I like a sit pad. I like this, and it does have a safety feature in it, which is that if I am stuck somewhere and can't move, whether it's for a couple hours or overnight, this also has some insulation. It'll keep me off the ground. So this is super great. I pull this out every time I have a meal. I am one of those people who like to use toilet paper every time I use the restroom, no matter what kind of restroom I use, what kind of visit I'm having. So I carry a toilet bag. This is a mini dry bag, and inside I have toilet paper, a towel, plastic bags for packing out my dirty TP, and hand sanitizer. So this is, and I just have it on a little carabiner, and I hang it outside of my backpack. So this is my little toilet bag. I think it's an essential. In my little pouch that has my sunscreen in it, I also have insect repellent. I am one of those people that if there is an insect that bites, it will find me and it will hurt me. So I do carry insect repellent in the same pouch as my sunscreen. I think it's an essential for me. Let's see, hiking poles. So as I get older, these become more and more useful. I'm not as quick on my feet. My balance is not as super. My knees are not as sturdy. There are many reasons why I like my hiking pole. This is also a great safety feature, a safety tool if need be, because it can prop up a tarp, or it could be a signal in the snow to identify that I am somewhere nearby if I have the pole sticking out of the snow. So there's a lot of great reasons why I carry the hiking pole, but mainly it's mostly to save my knees. And you'll see that, as I mentioned before, I have the duct tape wrapped around it. Emergency beacon spot. I don't actually carry that, but I know that that's an essential for many people. And it can be pretty expensive. The equipment is expensive, and then the service is expensive. So I use the traditional navigation tools of map, compass, and then a little bit more modern tool of a GPS to help me know where I am at least. It's, a beacon and a spot also helps tell other people where I might be. And so it's just a super great service to have, especially if you're going to be way out there and need to signal to folks that you're not able to move and that somebody needs to come to you. And so I have that listed as a possible essential. Again, everybody has people feel differently about it, but mostly it's a great service if you can afford it. Cameras. So, we're in the beautiful, nature, and we want to take photos of things, and the camera is super great. Point and shoot, it might be essential for some folks, but I think many of us now just use our smartphones. Our smartphone cameras are getting more and more powerful. The camera on my smartphone is more powerful than the camera I bought like 6 years ago that I paid $1,000 for. So there you go. Whistles. It's a great way to signal to folks if you are running out of breath, or you need to signal to folks where you are. Many backpacks, sporty backpacks, have like a little whistle that's built into the chest strap, and you can definitely use that. They're not super powerful though, so I think if you want to invest in a very inexpensive plastic real full whistle, it's so lightweight, and I think it's a great safety tool to have without it breaking the bank or being very heavy. So those are some of the additional essentials that I was thinking about sharing with you, and you may have others. But again, I just want to reiterate that the 10 Essentials is about gear, and it's not about gear. It's really about purpose. So what are the tools and what are the things that you need to help you stay safe and survive the night or multiple nights? We just want to think about, what are you carrying with you? And always think in the back of your head, what if I break my ankle? What if I get lost? What are the things that I have with me that are going to help me survive? And that's how you might think about the 10 Essentials. Thank you so much for joining. And I hope that this has been helpful to help you take some of the thinking out of your trip preparation, and really make you feel confident to go out there and not worry about safety and survival, but really think about all the fun that you're going to have and all the wonderful things that you're going to see, and the time that you're going to spend either with your loved ones or with fellow adventurers when you're out there. So thank you again, and have a great journey. Have a great adventure.